be careful what you spend yourself on. I never really heard that growing up. I was always, thinking, all right, Dad gave me $5 for my allowance for mowing the yard. And he would tell me, now think about what you're going to spend your money on. If you're going to spend it all on a few pieces of candy, which back in 1990, you could have got a lot more candy for $5 than you can now. But if you spend it on a few pieces of candy, you've got it, and it's gone. The candy is gone very quickly because I can eat things real quick. That's always been true about me. But I never really heard, be careful what you spend yourself on. That's something, as of late, that has been tugging at my heart. Now, in Exodus chapter 5, we've got some really good examples of how people can spend themselves. We're all familiar with the story of the Exodus. But I'm just going to read some majority of chapter 5 to you. And with this in mind, thinking, how are these individuals spending their time, their thoughts, all the things that we spend? All right, so chapter 5, verse 1. Afterward, Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Let my people go, so that they may hold a festival to me in the wilderness." Pharaoh said, "Who is the Lord, that I should obey him and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go." Then they said, "The God of the Hebrews has met with us. Now let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord, or he may strike us with plagues or with the sword." But the king of Egypt said, "Moses and Aaron, why are you taking the people away from their labor? Get back to your work." Then Pharaoh said, "Look, the people of the land are now numerous, and you are stopping them from working." That same day, Pharaoh gave this order to the slave drivers and overseers in charge of the people: "You are no longer to supply the people with straw for making bricks. Let them go and gather their own straw, but require them to make the same number of bricks as before. Don't reduce the quota. They are lazy. That is why they are crying out, 'Let us go and sacrifice to our God.' Make the work harder for the people so that they keep working and pay no attention to lies." Then the slave drivers and the overseers went out, said to the people, "This is what Pharaoh says, I will not give you any more straw. Go and get your own straw wherever you can find it, but your work will not be reduced at all." So the people scattered all over Egypt to gather stubble to use for straw. The slave drivers kept pressing them, saying, "Complete the work required for you for each day, just as when you had straw." And Pharaoh's slave driver beat the Israelite overseers they had appointed, demanding, "Why haven't you met your quota of bricks yesterday or today as before?" Then the Israelite overseers went and appealed to Pharaoh, "Why have you treated your servants this way? Your servants are given no straw, yet we are told, 'Make bricks.' Your servants are being beaten, but the fault is with your own people." Pharaoh said, "Lazy, that's what you are, lazy. That is why you keep saying, 'Let us go and sacrifice to the Lord.' Now get to work. You will not be given any straw, yet you must produce your full quota of bricks." The Israelite overseers realized they were in trouble when they were told, "You are not to reduce the number of bricks required of you for each day." When they left Pharaoh, they found Moses and Aaron waiting to meet them, and they said, "May the Lord look on you and judge you. You have made us obnoxious to Pharaoh and his officials and have put a sword in their hand to kill us." First of all, Pharaoh has just spent himself. He spent his time, his thoughts, his money on building something. Building a dynasty, building himself a name, building his authority. And then something always comes to threaten what you spend yourself on. Have you noticed that? You're trying to spend your time getting something done, and something always comes and interrupts that time. Because you've only got so much of it. Whenever someone says, "I don't have time for that," we all have 24 hours a day. None of us have more than that, and none of us have less than that. And really, the truth of the matter is, if you don't have time for something, it means that it's not the highest priority for you. But when it comes to Pharaoh, his time, his thoughts, probably his dreams, his money was spent building bigger and bigger things, making his name greater and greater. And in the Egyptian world of thinking, it was the greater I am, the greater I'll be in the afterlife. The more things I can fill my tomb with. And sometimes I wonder, is the American way of thinking so much different? Now, he spent a lot of time establishing his authority. And when Moses and Aaron come to him and they say, let us go for a few days, we might not see it as such a threat to his authority, but he did. Who is this God of the Hebrews that you talk about? I don't know him. That's a threat to his authority. It's interesting that Pharaoh would point the finger at someone else when the very thing he had spent himself on was being threatened. And the reason that's interesting to me is we do it in everyday life. When our time or our money is being spent, all right, when we're spending it, we're using it. We all spend it in different ways, right or wrong. We all do. But when we're pushing hard towards something, we're just gung-ho, and something comes in the way, or someone, whether it's their fault or not, it's real easy to just point the finger. Whether it's someone we love, and a lot of times it is. Things don't go how we want, and it's so easy to just point the finger, to put the blame on someone else. And that's what Pharaoh does here. It's nothing to do with me. It's you are lazy. Pharaoh was very offended because everything he was spending his whole self on was being threatened. The essence of who he was just trying so hard to attain to be was being pushed just a little bit. And we all know how the story goes. We know a lot of the book of Exodus, and we know that he doesn't give up. Pharaoh's heart gets hardened. And even in today's world, it is so important for us to be careful what we spend ourselves on, because after you spend so much of yourself, there's only so much of you to give, but after you spend so much of yourself on a thing, after you spend so much of yourself on an idea, you have basically given yourself to it. And if it's not God, if it's not Jesus who loves you back, there's nothing left but a hardened heart. And we all know how the story goes. Pharaoh's heart was hardened. And I mean, he was just going at it with everything he had. Fine, let him go. And then he goes after him. And you'd like to just think, well, that was just Pharaoh. I couldn't ever do anything like that. I couldn't ever just be so gung-ho that it doesn't matter who I hurt. It doesn't matter what happens. I'm going to keep going after it, whether it's godly or not. I could never do that, but you know what? We all have that capacity. It's just, this is just someone that's highlighted in a whole book of Scripture. We don't ever want to get to the point that we've given ourselves to something so much that we can almost say, who is the Lord? I don't know him. We don't want to ever get to the point where we've given ourselves to something or someone or some idea so much that God and the idea of that relationship with him has fallen by the wayside. All right, so you've got Pharaoh's ideas here. I think we have a pretty good understanding of where he was headed. Make bricks with straw. That was actually a common thing. Took straw, mixed it in with the clay, and as the straw fermented, as it decayed, there was actually a chemical reaction that happened there and caused a really nice hardening. And it made strong brick. But to go and expect the impossible, to go get your own straw that used to be provided for you, and then make the same amount, I mean, that's some serious overtime, without benefits, without time and a half, to expect the impossible. You see, this becomes very real to me. There's definitely been times in my life where I was so gung-ho on something, and if things didn't fall right into the place, in my mind, everything was awry, and it was angry. I mean, I'm sure that some of us can identify with this. And the finger gets pointed, and then I expect the impossible from others. We can relate to some of these things. Yeah, none of us have slaves, all right? We don't do that like Pharaoh did. But there's been times that I've been so gung-ho that I might have treated someone that way. Because sometimes we just get so focused on that end goal, whatever that is, that people around us become collateral damage. You can apply this to a multitude of different scenarios in your life. So we've got another group of people here. It's the overseers. All right. So these are guys these are Hebrew guys that are to oversee the other Hebrews and make sure they're doing their job. All right, and they're getting in big trouble because these bricks aren't getting made as quick. The old brick factory is halfway shut down. All right, and it's not from COVID; it's from lack of material. May the Lord look on you and judge you. You have made us obnoxious to Pharaoh, and his officials have put a sword in their hand to kill us. Do you think that they were thinking about these things as they laid their head down at night to go to sleep? I think so. Do you think that this very thought that these things, that their lives could end the next day because Pharaoh was mad? Do you think they had a hard time sleeping because of this? I think so. Do you think this just pervaded their minds, that they would do anything to just make sure that they could preserve themselves? Just make the bricks, whatever it takes, just do it. And Moses and Aaron, go back to where you came from. They missed something really important, though. They missed something really important. They could see what was right in front of their face in the physical, okay? That's typically what just pervades our minds. What's right in front of our face in the physical. But they were blind to the spiritual. Now, if you remember, Pharaoh made a comment about how numerous the people were getting. There's a promise earlier in Israel's history how they would become as numerous as the sand, grains of sand, as numerous as the stars. And it was a promise made to Abraham. And so, in just looking at the physical here in front of them, they are completely forgetting that there is a covenantal promise coming to reality in the land of slavery that they're living in. Even in the worst of the worst situations, God's promises always stand true. Even in the worst addiction, even in the worst time of someone's life, even in prison, even in the worst person you can think of, there is always a glimmer of hope that they will grasp the promise of God and be completely changed. And so even in this time in Israel's history, there is fear in Pharaoh's heart, because as Israel gets too numerous, that's also a threat to his authority. Too many of them, it's harder to control. And they could rise up against his people. So from Pharaoh's point of view and from the overseer's point of view, we can learn something. If we are easily offended, and if we are easily upset, and we wonder why, it could very well be that we are headstrong in the wrong direction. It's not always the case. But it could very well be that our priorities, that what we're spending ourselves on, isn't based in Scripture or in our relationship with Jesus Christ at all, but just something on the side. It might be a good thing that we're spending ourselves on. But if it replaces the Lord, and if it pushes him aside, it's perverted and it's not good. And it rots the soul. It takes and takes and takes and takes, but never gives back. You can give yourself to a lot of things, just about anything. But there's only one who gives back. There's only one who fulfills more in here than what's been given. It really defies the laws of matter. You know, we've all learned in school that anytime matter, it seems as though it disappears, it doesn't. If you burn something, it turns from a solid into a gas. If you boil water, it turns from liquid into a gas. The matter has not been lost. However, spiritually talking here, this just defies the laws of physics because that's the God that we serve. You can give just a little bit to God, and he takes that and fills just to overflowing exponentially what was given. He replaces it with more than what was given to him. Be careful what you spend yourself on. Your time, your thoughts, your attention. Then the Lord said to Moses, now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh. This is chapter 6. Because of my mighty hand, he will let them go. Because of my mighty hand, he will drive them out of his country. God also said to Moses, I am the Lord. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as God Almighty. But my name, the Lord, I did not make myself fully known to them. I also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, where they reside as foreigners. Moreover, I have heard the groaning of the Israelites, whom the Egyptians are enslaving, and I have remembered my covenant. These are the things that are just flowing through Moses and Aaron's mind. You can read a lot about Moses in the verses that precede this. And you can really begin to wonder and think about what was going through his head. You see that there's some fear in Moses' head. He was stuttering a little bit. He didn't feel qualified for the job. And, he told God a lot of things, and there was a lot of frustration toward his people later in the book here. But one thing's for sure. The end goal that Moses had was God's goal. That he aligned himself with what God had in store for his people. And that is an example, a great example of what you and I can follow. Almost 11 years ago, my little Sadie was born. She'll be 11 in December. And I don't remember how many days I took off work, but I don't think it was more than one when she was born. It wasn't one. So it wasn't more than one. So you just shook your head like I'm wrong.
Well, it was one.
Anyway, I took a day off, one day, for my first born to come into this world. I can look back and I can see that I was so gung-ho, I was so dead set on getting my business going that there was nothing that was going to pull me away from that very long. Taking that one day off was a big deal. And if I can say something I'm ashamed to say, it's, oh my goodness, that was an interruption in what I was trying to get done. I can fully identify with being so dead set, so bent upon a goal, that nothing is going to get in the way. There are many times that I have apologized to my wife. There are many times I've thought about it in regret. For the very first year of Sadie's life. And I learned. It took me a while, but I learned how to balance things out. Be aware of what you are spending yourself upon. Because if it's not giving back to you, it's not God. And if it's not God, it's not good.